Welcome to Dark Whispers. If you're listening to this alone, you might want to turn on a light because the Appalachian Mountains have a strange way of remembering things. Some say the hills breathe after midnight. Some say the trees whisper names that no one has spoken for decades. And some have heard things that never should have existed at all. Our first encounter begins with Elias Norwood, a forest surveyor who worked near the Tennessee-North Carolina line. He wasn't a man easily frightened. 30 years in the mountains had made him tougher than bark. But there was one section of forest, deep in the Smoky Hollows. He refused a map. The locals called it Old Widow's Deep, and they avoided it like a plague. Elias only went there once. Once was enough. It was early October, fog thick as we're crawling between the trees. He noticed immediately how unnaturally silent the forest was. No birds, no insects, not even wind. The air smelled stagnant, like a cellar sealed too long. Still, he pressed north toward a region marked only with faded logging symbols. Then he saw it. A cabin, weather-rotted, roof half-collapsed, windows smashed. He would have ignored it if not for the faint sound, humming. A woman's voice. Low, melodic, completely out of place. Elias called out. No answer. But the humming grew louder. As he stepped toward the door, the sound stopped. A sudden thump hit the inside wall. Something moved, slow, dragging, like wet limbs sliding across the floorboards. Elias forced himself forward, pushing the door open with his boot. Total darkness swallowed the cabin's insides. He lifted his flashlight. Someone was standing at the back wall. A woman, barefoot, long, matted hair covering her face. Her spine twisted wrong, as if she'd been broken and put back together. Ma'am, Elias whispered. The woman tilted her head in a slow, unnatural arc, as if her neck were no longer bone but rope. Then she sang, the same humming he'd heard outside, but now layered with voices. Dozens, hundreds, all whispering through her throat. Elias stepped back and the woman lurched forward, impossibly fast, her feet scraping blood across the wooden floor. She reached toward him with fingers long enough to belong to something not human. Elias fled. But the thing chased him, its footsteps silent, its breath cold enough to frost the air. He didn't look back until he reached the tree lean, and that's when he saw it. The woman wasn't alone. For more figures had crawled out of the cabin behind her, each broken, bent, their mouths stretched like torn fabric. They watched Elias in the shadows, humming the same layered song. Elias never returned. Our second encounter came from a pair of hikers, Madeline and Joel, siblings who grew up exploring the Blue Ridge. They weren't the type to scare easily, but one summer night, they camped near an abandoned coal road and heard what they thought was a child laughing near their tent. They checked. No child, just trees swaying faintly in the moonlight. At 3:14 a.m., the laughing returned, closer, louder, circling the tent. Joel grabbed a flashlight and unzipped the flap. There were tiny footprints in the dirt, bare, human, leading into the trees and disappearing suddenly, as if whoever made them simply stopped existing mid-step. Against their better judgment, they followed the prints. The forest grew colder with every step. Not mountain night cold, but something deeper, like the temperature dropped from the inside out. Then they heard it, a child's whisper, "Come play with us." Madeline's hand tightened on Joel's shirt, because the voice didn't come from just one direction. It came from all around them, mimicking itself, overlapping like broken recordings. Their flashlight flickered, and in the beam, for just 1 second, they saw 3 children standing between the trees, motionless, pale, eyes solid black, their clothes old-fashioned, soaked like they'd been pulled from a river. Joel dropped the light. When he picked it up, the children were gone. But the whisper returned, this time right behind them. "Don't leave us here alone." They ran back to camp, abandoned everything, and didn't stop until they reached the highway. A ranger later told them a coal wagon had plunged into a river near that area over 100 years ago, carrying 3 children who were never found. The mountains had grown darker now. Stories didn't just come from wanderers. They seeped from the soil, carved into the roots of ancient trees older than any map. The deeper you walked into those ridges, the more reality began to loosen, like the world you knew at thin seams, and something on the other side was pulling them apart. Our third encounter came from Marjorie Tate, a mail carrier in a remote Kentucky valley. Her route took her down a dirt road that no GPS recognized. The locals didn't like that road. They said it shifted, literally changed direction when the fog rolled in. One morning she reached a fork she swore had never existed. Left or right, both paths were equally unfamiliar, and her radio static buzzed like something was whispering through it. She chose left. A mistake. After 10 minutes, she realized the road wasn't a road anymore. The gravel had thinned. The trees leaned inward, bending unnaturally low, as if trying to block her escape. Then the engine sputtered. Marjorie stepped out. Silence, except for a faint knocking. Tap, tap, tap. The sound echoed from the woods. Not woodpecker fast. Slow, intentional, like knuckles on a door. She backed toward her truck. Tap, tap, tap. Closer now. Something moved in the fog. A tall, gaunt shape dragging its left arm like it was dead weight. Marjorie froze. The figure was wrong in every possible way. Too thin, too smooth, skin the color of ash. No face, just a stretched blank surface. But the knocking didn't come from it. It came from above. She looked up. Another faceless figure clung upside down to a tree branch, limbs wrapped like a spider. It raised a finger and tapped the bark. Tap, tap, tap. The two creatures moved in unison, one walking toward her, the other crawling overhead, their limbs bending backward like broken marionettes. Marjorie scrambled back into her truck, locked the doors, and prayed. When the fog thinned, she found herself back on the main road. The fork was gone. She turned in her resignation the next day. Our fourth encounter came from an old man named Harlan Bishop, who lived alone near an abandoned mining tunnel. Harlan was no storyteller, but he had one rule: never go outside after the third owl hoot at night. When asked why, he said, "That ain't an owl." One evening, Harlan heard the first hoot just after sunset, the second an hour later, the third at nearly midnight. Except this time, something answered it, something deep, rumbling, too low to be a bird, almost like a growl spoken through a throat full of gravel. He looked outside. A massive silhouette stood at the tree lean. At first, he thought it was a bear. But bears don't stand taller than door frames, and they don't have glowing yellow eyes that blink sideways like a reptile. The creature stepped forward, its body covered in thick matted fur, but its arms were too long, reaching nearly to the ground. It sniffed the air. The ground trembled as it approached the porch. Harlan grabbed his rifle. The creature leaned down, its face inches from the glass window. Its breath fogged the pane, hot, foul, metallic. Then it spoke, not with words, with a voice that scraped into Harlan's mind. "Mine!" Harlan fired. The bullet hit, but the creature didn't bleed. It didn't roar. It simply melted backward into the trees like smoke. That night, Harlan left his cabin and never returned. Our final encounter tonight came from 3 rescue workers searching for a missing photographer near Black Mountain. They discovered his campsite torn apart, his gear scattered as if ripped from the inside outward. But the strangest thing was the photographs on his camera, images taken in the dark. Every photo showed the same thing: a cave entrance behind his tent. But there was no cave in that area. Still, the team followed the clues. They found the cave at sunset, a gaping hole that looked like it had opened recently, teeth-like rocks lining its mouth. They entered with flashlights. The walls were covered in handprints. Hundreds. Tiny ones. Huge ones. And some that didn't look like hands at all. Then they heard it. Breathing. Slow. Heavy. Wet. Something massive moved deeper inside. The light barely reached far enough to reveal a hunched shape growing taller, rising until its head nearly scraped the ceiling. The creature wasn't shaped like any living thing. No eyes, no mouth, just skin stitched together by something ancient. It stepped forward, and the ground shook, and the cave began to collapse. Only one rescuer made it out. He claimed the cave sealed behind him, like the mountain swallowed itself shut. The missing photographer was never found. The Appalachians hold their secrets deep. Their shadows stretch long. And those who've heard these encounters know the truth. Some places are alive. Some things never died. And some whispers were never meant for human ears.